If you listened to our last episode, 138, you might remember that we promised a certain t-shirt design would be done. Well, it is, and we also made several more based on the Mary Mac Bakehouse logo and the podcast logo. If you go to marymacpodcast.com, under Shop All, there is now a button that says Shirts and Stuff. We created a spring page, formerly Teespring, that has shirts, a hoodie, coffee mugs, and a tote bag. All spring products are made to order, so we don't have a large amount of stock just on hand. You order directly from them. When you place your order, they will print the t-shirt and then send it directly to you. And as always, for baking mixes of all kinds, check out marymacpodcast.com.
Hello and welcome to In the Kitchen with Mary Mac. Today I'm going to give you my recipe for braciole. Braciole is one of those things that you usually don't have a recipe for, so this took a little bit of thought. There's a lot of things in home cooking and family cooking and that you just know how to make them, or
it just doesn't get written down. It's
right.
just like a teaching thing.
Right. And somebody in the family tells you how to make it and whatever. So that's what happened to me with my braciole. And the really funny thing is braciole is really easy to make. It's easier to make than meatballs, okay? And I could never understand. I love braciole. And I could never understand why we never had braciole. Nobody made braciole. It was like a special occasion food. Like on a holiday, grandma might make it, or my mom might make it, or whatever. But it's so easy. I'm like, geez, I kind of, for a while there, I was making it all the time just because, it's like bing, bang, boom, it's done, Anyway, that's my little braciole rant. But what braciole is some people call it stuffed steak. Apparently non-Italian people make this, and it's not in pasta sauce, and it's called stuffed steak, and they just cook it and slice it. I can't even imagine.
It would be so dry without pasta sauce.
Can't even imagine. I think they might put it in gravy. I have never had it. Oh. I've only heard of it, and it frightens me.
That makes me sad that people are like,
yeah, they're missing
out.
It's
so much better with red sauce.
Missing out. So the way I do this, I do it a little different. I did look at some recipes online for doing braciole, and I'm going to give you, there's a lot of technique involved in this. So I'm going to tell you how I do it, and it comes out really well. It makes it a little bit easier, in my opinion, after reading how the few recipes that were from non-Italian websites, blogs, cooks, chefs, whatever. I was like, geez, these guys are doing way more work than they need to. So here's what you need. You're going to need a round steak. Now, I do my braciole I try to do it in one piece. The problem is sometimes when you buy a round steak, it kind of almost, it separates, But I do try to keep it in one piece just because I have tried it a few different ways and it comes out better. So what you want to do is get a nice lean round steak. You want it to be sliced about 1/2 inch thick. You don't want it very thick. You want to trim the fat, that if there's any fat on it, any gristle on it, trim it off, remove the bone if needed, and now you got your round steak ready. So, you're going to do this all on a cutting board. Put your round steak on there while you're working on it. Do it on a cutting board. Now, while it's sitting there on your cutting board, season it with salt, pepper, and garlic. So take some nice kosher salt, maybe about 1/2 teaspoon of salt, sprinkle over the steak, about 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, sprinkle over the steak, rub it in, and then get some minced garlic and sprinkle it over the steak and kind of press it down into the meat and flip it over if you can. And do the same thing with the other side. Press it in the meat, set aside. Okay? The breadcrumbs. You can use regular old seasoned Italian breadcrumbs, or panko breadcrumbs work fine for this. Or you can make your own fresh breadcrumbs. And I typically like to use day-old bread, day-old white bread for this, that is firm enough that you can grate it and it falls into pieces. You get a better filling with it, but You can just use the regular old container of breadcrumbs or panko seasoned breadcrumbs. If you do the fresh breadcrumb thing, there's a couple easy ways to do this. One is just break your bread up into pieces, drop it into your food processor, and pulse it a few times until it's all chopped up. That works very well with this. So if you're going to do it in your food processor, you're going to want to make about 2 cups of breadcrumbs, probably, with fresh breadcrumbs. It depends. Like I said before in my eggplant rollatini recipe, just keep the container next to you because you may need more than I'm telling you. But if you make your breadcrumbs up, if you make about 2 cups of them, pulse them up in your food processor, and then add into your breadcrumbs a half teaspoon of basil, a pinch of salt and pepper, and then you want to put about a 1/4 teaspoon of granulated garlic and granulated onion in there. Pulse it a little bit more, and now your breadcrumbs are ready for us to use. So you set your breadcrumbs aside. Now, to assemble this deal, first you want to put your sauce on. My recipe for sauce is in episode 78 of In the Kitchen with Mary Mac. You can either make your own sauce, use my recipe, or buy about 2 quarts of sauce. And we're going to do this in a Dutch oven on your stovetop. Okay? So put 2 quarts of sauce in a Dutch oven on your stovetop and heat that up until it's just simmering. While that's heating up, we can assemble our braciole. What you want to do is have some cooking string handy. It's that nice heavy white string that you see on television. The butchers used to tie up the roasts and stuff in it. You can buy it anywhere, just nice heavy string. You want to cut about 6 pieces of it, maybe 12 inches long each, and lay them out on a cutting board or on your clean table surface about 1 inch apart. And we're going to set the steak on top of that, so it makes it a little bit easier to tie when we roll it up. It actually makes it a lot easier to tie when you roll it up if you remember to do this. I typically don't remember to do this, but it all works out in the end. Put your steak on top of the strings and spread your steak out nice and flat. Press down on it, and get it all set up there. Make sure your strings are pulled out on both sides, and now we're getting ready here. You want to beat your egg, beat it really well, and you're going to coat the top of your steak with that beaten egg. Now, you're going to lose a little egg off the sides, but try really hard to keep it on the steak. Once you get your egg on there, you're going to cover your egg with the breadcrumbs, and you want to do it really carefully, but if you can get it on there nice and thick, like especially if you use the fresh breadcrumbs, you can get it to stay maybe about a 1/2 inch thick on there. You cannot do this with the seasoned breadcrumbs that are dry. Forget it. You might get a 1/4 inch on there. But you want to cover your egg, and you want to get a nice thick layer of breadcrumbs on there and pat it down with your hands and adjust it onto the steak so it's like formed on there. Now, very carefully, you're going to have a good end of your steak and a bad end of your steak. Bad end meaning like where the meat has come apart a little bit, or it's not, just one big piece. So if you want to start with the bad end of your steak and gradually roll it nice and tight as you can get it, roll it all up, and then pull your string up around it and tie it. This may take 4 hands. If it does, call someone over to tie the strings. Always a good idea. Tie your strings, get it nice and tight. It might not look as pretty as you think, but believe me, it'll come out nice. Now, very carefully, don't cut your strings off also. I learned this from cutting my strings off and then burning my hands putting it into the sauce. Take your cutting board over to your nice hot pan of sauce, pick your braciole up by the strings and lower it down into the sauce, and just set it very carefully in there. And then what I do is I spoon hot sauce up over the top, let it cook for a little while, turn it, and you want to, try to stir the sauce every few minutes, turn the braciole until you get it to where it's come back to a simmer again. And then you want it to cook for about 1.5 to 2 hours on medium low. So just turn it and cook it, and it will get deliciously tender. You can test your steak with a food thermometer to test when it's done. But after cooking about 1.5 to 2 hours, it's going to be done. Now you can serve this with pasta. The sauce becomes very delicious because you'll lose a little bit of the breadcrumbs into the sauce, and it does wonderful things for the sauce. I can't even tell you. But you'll get that delicious flavor from the seasoned meat cooking in your sauce, and then you make your pasta. Take your braciole very carefully. You can use a couple of forks and poke them through where the strings are tied onto the meat and lift it out of the sauce and put your pasta in the sauce and toss it around and then plate it up. And when you plate your braciole, what I usually do is I take the braciole out and set it on a platter and let it cool. It not cool, but let it set for like 15 minutes or so while you're messing with the pasta. And when you're ready to serve it, you want to cut it into about a 1-inch slice and then put a slice of braciole on a plate with the pasta. And it's so, I'm going to have to make braciole this week again. But it's so good. It's just so good. And it's, like I said, it's not hard to make. It's not any harder than making meatballs. It's probably a little easier than making meatballs. And this, like one steak will serve, you probably get about 8 to 10 slices off of it, and it's nice. It's a nice, different thing. It's delicious. It tastes so good. Don't just save it for the holidays either. So do it a practice run, give yourself a practice run on this, and then invite the family over and make braciole, and everyone will be so impressed. You can actually fit 2 in a Dutch oven, by the way. If you have more people coming, you can fit 2 in a Dutch oven, and they fit right in there. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this recipe. If you've never had braciole, or you've never made braciole,
or if you've made braciole the non-Italian way.
Yes, the non-Italian way. And some people brown their braciole in the skillet first. I never brown it because I don't want that hard... you don't want that hard surface on your meat. You want your meat to be beautifully tender and, almost poached in there. It's delicious. It's delicious. And this is the kind of thing that when people talk about gravy, this is it. When sauce is called gravy, this is kind of what you're looking at. So it's very good. This is very good recipe. I've made this a zillion times. I actually buy sides of beef and I get all of the round steaks cut a 1/2 inch thick, only for braciole. That's all we do with them. So, so there you go. There's your nice braciole recipe. Enjoy that.
And make sure to check us out online on Facebook and Instagram at Mary Mac Bakehouse, on Twitter at Mobile Mary Mac and Mary Mac Podcast, and on our website, marymacpodcast.com.
Thanks a lot for listening if you did, and if you didn't, too bad for you.